Young. I'm the Naturalist with Marshall County Conservation, and today we're out tapping maple trees for our maple syrup program through Marshall County Conservation. So earlier this winter I actually was out with our forester to identify maple trees. It's definitely harder to identify trees in the wintertime than in the summertime, so we were lucky enough to have him out here and we were able to mark several maple trees. We are tapping hard maples today. And so this here is a sugar maple. I always say they're kind of the ugliest trees in the forest sometimes. They are older trees and they tend to break off, but they've got a kind of unique bark, and then they are an opposite branching system, so it's a little bit different than looking at like an oak. So the branches actually split off opposite of each other versus kind of staggered on the stem. So we are going to be tapping these trees and then collecting sap on a daily basis once the sap starts to flow. And that kind of depends on the weather. So we are having a kind of a warm stretch here, so we decided to go ahead and tap, even though it's a little bit early, and see what happens, because when the days are above freezing and the nights are below freezing, that's the prime time to tap for maple syrup. I'll show you here how to tap the trees and then what setups we're using this year. And this is a learning experience for us. We've done it in the past through Marshall County Conservation, but we're kind of doing things differently. We're going to see if this works well, and hopefully we'll get a good syrup production here. So we're going to tap the trees, and we're going to use 5-gallon buckets, and these are just buckets that we got at a local store. And we have two different systems. We have the old-fashioned metal spiles. Now, spiles is what actually goes into the tree. So when we tap the tree, we drill a hole into the tree, insert the spile. This is going to work in the fact that the bucket is going to hang on the spile, and then it will drain sap into the trees when the days get warm. Because when the days get warm, the trees are going to start to move sugar up and down through the system to provide energy to start the whole budding out process. So this is the metal spile. We hook it in there like that. Now, nowadays you can get a new system, and this has the issue of maybe getting more debris, more liquid things into the buckets that you don't want to get into. A more secure system that most of ours is called a tube and then a plastic spile. So, sorry, it kind of blends in with my black gloves, but it's a plastic spile that will go into the tube. The tube will then go into the top of the bucket. We'll drill and then collect that way. But we do have to collect on a regular basis, especially on nice warm days when the sap really starts to flow. So I think we'll go ahead and show an example of tapping the tree. Jeremiah, do you want to go over the drill and the depth and everything?
So on the two different spiles have their different sizes. The new plastic ones are 5/16 drill bit, and you go 2.5 inches deep into the tree on the south side of the tree, so from the southeast around to the southwest. And then the old spiles, the metal ones, are 7/16 drill bit, so we'll kind of do both. We'll do the new style first, then we'll switch over and do the old style. So here, and then when you start drilling, you just do it at a slight incline there, so the sap will flow out into the spile. And while you're drilling, you need to kind of go slow so it doesn't burn the wood, so it keeps the pores open so the sap will flow. And I got a mark on my drill bit so I know how deep I'm going. And then here we found it easier to put the tubing on the spile before it's on the tree.
Now this tree is a larger tree. Depending on the diameter of the tree, depends on how many spiles you can put into it. So this tree, since it's in the 24 to 25 range, we can put 2 spiles in it, whereas if it was smaller, then you would only put in 1 spile, and you never want to put in more than 3.
So then when you go to pound it in, it just kind of lightly tap until it gets to a point where your hammer just kind of starts bouncing off, and it's in. And then here on these lids we got these tight holes on here so it keeps all water and other debris out of it. And then So there's a spot. The bucket to sit, and that's the new style plastic spiles done on that one. So now we'll switch and do the old spile. Kind of the same thing. It's about the same height at a slight angle.
Want the other hammer?
We'll try this one. Yeah, let me see the other one. This kind of same thing, you kind of go until it stops, and you don't want to split the bark. So don't pound it in too deep or too hard. Just kind of go until there's resistance there. This one, and there, that's the older metal spiles. Complete, just hangs on the tree like that. Sap in the bucket, I guess it kind of depends upon the days, but in a good day you might get 2-3 gallons of sap in a day on a really good day. So that's why you need to check the buckets daily. Get it dumped out, otherwise your buckets will be overflowing. So like this tree, if it's a really nice day, you know, you can get 6 gallons of sap out of this tree. That's if all the conditions and everything are right. So when we're tapping 10 trees, and they all are 2-tap ones so far. So we'll see, we're going to keep records of all the trees, how much sap we get, temperature of the days, just to kind of see what days are the best.
We have a history here in Iowa that we can build on. And then we also have, unfortunately, a conversion of our native timbers, which is supposed to be oak and hickory. And through either a lack of management or through smaller parcel sizes, people don't want to manage for oak and hickory. And we're seeing a lot of timber grade into sugar maple. As you go east from 35, you get more sugar and black maple. Spring is the syrup season. Today was almost too nice of a day, all right? We need freezing nights and we need warm days. And that freezing and thawing action will make the sap rise in that tree. We're getting this weather, which is perfect syrup weather. We no longer tap by the date of the calendar, we tap by the weather. We tapped early when it started to run, so no longer look at the date. If you start to see these temperatures 40, 50 degrees, back down into freezing like we've had this week, you tap last week. You never wait anymore. You know, the savings grace, we're middle of February right now. If this had happened the 1st of March, we'd be done with the syrup season. So the tree's physiology means we need day length. Okay, so we haven't reached our day length limit where the buds will begin to expand and go. So we've got the temperature right. We don't have the day length, thank goodness. And so you probably be all right, but you're going to make a lot less syrup than you did last year. We sell 80% of our crop in 2 weekends. All right, it just goes. We do no other marketing. My uncle thinks it's, you know, the economy's bad. If they're not sold out by the 4th of July, they know the economy's south. And nowhere else in the world is maple syrup made. It's made from Iowa. We stand on the western border to Maine. 95% of the world's syrup is made in Quebec. All right, they're the powerhouse. They drive the market. But we stand on the western edge of a commercial market here. All right, so we can tap any acer, all right, any maple tree. Sugar maples and blacks are high on our list, all right? They're going to have the sweetest sap out there, average of 2 to 3%. And it's all based on how big the crown of those trees are. If they're nice and healthy and big, they're going to give you 3.5%. And you're going to see why that's important. Our silver maples on the bottom ground. It makes syrup that we could do a taste test and you wouldn't know the difference between a silver maple made maple syrup and a sugar and a black, all right? But you're looking anywhere from 1.5 to 2% sugar sap from those. We can tap red maple, all right? As soon as we get into the silvers and the reds and the box elders, these warm-up days are really going to kill us, all right? They are going to break their buds and flower earlier. As soon as the buds break, the sap changes, and the syrup is what we call buddy. You don't want to be in the sugar house when you're making buddy syrup. It stinks, it tastes bad, and if you ever buy Aunt Jemima's, which is a swear word to any maple syrup producer, and it says with real maple syrup, they're adding in the cheapest syrup we can make at the end of the season, and that's buddy syrup, all right? So just know your syrup is going to be, or the season's going to be shorter as you get to these other trees. And box elder only has a 1% sugar sap solution, all right? And sap is a perishable commodity, all right? It is a sugar-based liquid. It will spoil on days like today, so we have to handle it rather quickly or keep it cold. I use that as an excuse to build a walk-in cooler. My wife caught on to that in a hurry. So you need some vessel to collect it in. You need some way to store it in. But then we'll talk about what we can use for boiling and what not to use. And then we need to talk a little bit about how do we filter syrup and then how do we pack it and can it, all right? So there's all sorts of different things out there. There's these sap bags, all right? Wonderful little invention. You're looking at that holder up here and the spile are going to run you about $10 to $11, and they're reusable. The sap bag, when you're done, you throw it in your recycle bin and off it goes, or you throw it in the trash and off it gets, probably not recycled. 25 cents a piece, they're one season and done. All right, don't bother washing them out. It doesn't work well. The drawbacks. Deer have figured out they can nibble on those if they're curious, and so you're going to lose a few in the first couple years when they learn what they're doing. Raccoons will chew on them and squirrels will chew on them. All right, so when they punch a little hole in it, out goes your sap. So that's the only disadvantage. You can buy old metal spiles or plastic ones online, and a lot of the big equipment dealers have figured out, at least locally and up into Wisconsin, Iowa has a good market. If you want 10 spiles, they're going to break the bag and they'll send you 10. So there's a couple of dealers that I can get you if you want to buy smaller lots. And then these buckets are expensive, all right? And they also make really nice targets if you have a kid out there with a .22. So I would shy away from buying the really nice buckets and just get yourself some 5-gallon buckets. All right, so what are we looking at? First you have to decide what size drill bit I need. Am I going with 5/16 or I'm going to use 7/16? Biggest issue we have, when people drill, they either drill all the way in, and you don't need to do that. I only want you to drill in 1.5 to 2 inches, all right? And then the other problem we have, and especially with our students when I send them out to tap, they think that tap has to go all the way into that hole. You know, I made a hole that deep, I better drive that spile all the way in. You don't want to do that. What we need to do is, here's our tap hole that we've drilled. You need to leave a little vessel back there as that sap oozes out of the wood, as it runs out of the wood. It needs a place to go before it runs out that tap, all right? So we only drive the tap in just enough to seat it. If we tap during frozen conditions, when the trees are frozen, you have to be really careful because wood will break, all right? And if you're drilling or driving that spile into the tree, you can pop the tree open and then all your sap will run out that crack and not down into your bucket. So just be real careful when you tap that spile in. We go to the store and we buy the smallest child-size hammer we can find, all right? And preferably, it'll be a ball peen hammer. It's the smallest one you can find. It is a child one, all right? And when you're driving with a ball peen hammer, the smallest one you can get, you hold it loose, all right? And you just sort of tap on it. And you'll hear thunk, 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 thud. As soon as it changes sound, it's seated itself. You hit it one more time and it'll crack. So that's why we always use the smallest hammer and you listen to it. You don't let the biggest guy out in the woods ever tap trees, all right? And this is based off of the 5/16 inch spout, all right? So the smaller spouts are called health spouts, all right? That's a marketing gimmick. They give you the same amount of sap. They do the same amount of damage to the tree. It's okay. 10 to 15 inches, all right? On a 15-inch tree, I'm going to put one tap in that tree. I always tap on the south side of the tree, or I tap on the southwest side of the tree. Why do I do that? Sunshine. It's the first side to warm up. It's the first side to run, and it'll run more sap, okay? 2 taps. I don't want to jam them both on the same side, so I'll swing them around. I'll do one on the southeast, one on the southwest, all right? 3-tap trees, they're 21 to 25 inches, and very rarely do we ever go over a 4-tap tree. That would be one of our silver maples, you know, down on the bottom. We never tap in the same zone that we tapped the year before, or several years before. And so what I mean is I drill a hole, and then the next year when I come to tap that tree, I move over to, up to, drill another hole. The following year, I'll move over to, up to. I'm going to spiral all the way around that tree. So there are some years I will be tapping on the north side of that tree, all right? I'll just expect to get less sap that year, all right? Or a later season sap because it thaws out later, all right? If I tap directly above or below the tap hole from the past, that tree compartmentalizes the damage. And this is based off of the 5/16 inch spout. All right, so the smaller spouts are called health spouts, all right? That's a marketing gimmick. They give you the same amount of sap. They do the same amount of damage to the tree. It's okay. 10 to 15 inches, all right? On a 15-inch tree, I'm going to put one tap in that tree. I always tap on the south side of the tree, or I tap on the southwest side of the tree. Why do I do that? Sunshine. It's the first side to warm up. It's the first side to run, and it'll run more sap, okay? 2 taps. I don't want to jam them both on the same side, so I'll swing them around. I'll do one on the southeast, one on the southwest, all right? 3-tap trees, they're 21 to 25 inches, and very rarely do we ever go over a 4-tap tree. That would be one of our silver maples, you know, down on the bottom. We never tap in the same zone that we tapped the year before, or several years before. And so what I mean is I drill a hole, and then the next year when I come to tap that tree, I move over to, up to, drill another hole. The following year, I'll move over to, up to. I'm going to spiral all the way around that tree. So there are some years I will be tapping on the north side of that tree, all right? I'll just expect to get less sap that year. All right, or a later season sap because it thaws out later, all right? If I tap directly above or below the tap hole from the past, that tree compartmentalizes the damage. It walls itself off, and it won't run sap the next year, all right? So if you want to get sap, move over to, up to, and corkscrew your way around. Within, you know, a year or two, that tap hole should seal itself back over, and I'll show you some here in a minute. And it should look like a belly button, all right? Within 2 years, if the tree has a good canopy, it's going to seal itself over. On the new systems that run tubing from tree to tree, and we pull a vacuum with a vacuum pump on that to more efficiently get more sap quicker, our wound in the tree is smaller. We're more efficient at getting sap out of a smaller zone, and it does actually less damage to the tree. So once you drill this hole in a tree, it is there for life. At the end of the season, when you pull that tap out, you don't ever, the old boys used to stick a stick in there and break it off. You don't do that. A tree figures it out that there's a foreign body stuck in there, and it will begin to rot. If you let that tree do what trees will and dry out the wound and seal over, it won't rot. Or it won't rot in our lifetime, all right? But it will always be there. And so they're going into sugar woods now, and once they're through their productive life of making maple syrup, they're cutting them down and turning it into flooring because it has these beautiful sap stains and all these nice, perfect round holes that you only need a 7/16 inch dowel to fill because everything's drilled with the same hole. Our rule, we try to boil everything within 12 hours. From the time it comes out of the tree until it's turned into syrup is 12 hours. If we have to store it, we need to refrigerate it. Better yet, freeze it. And so they're doing work with freezing up to a week or more until they boil it. So when in doubt, boil it awfully quick. 1% sap that comes out of a box cellar, you need 86 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. 2% from a sugar maple, you need 43 gallons of sap. So you see why we always pick the sweetest trees? Because Mother Nature is just a wonderful thing, all right? She has put on this earth sweeter sugar maple and silver maple trees than the average, and we don't know why. But you find them out there, and we test them. And we now have trees that on silver maples average between 5 and 6% sugar. Yeah, it's cool. The best sugar maple tree that we have found and propagated is 10% sugar. 10% sugar, I need less than 10 gallons of raw sap. The cool thing is, the sweeter the trees that you tap, the more sap they give. It's a double whammy. You get more sap and it's sweeter. And so we're working at propagating these sweeter trees and understanding why in the world are they here? You know, what advantage does it give to that tree to have sweeter sap? What is it trading off in its lifespan to have? Because everything's a trade-off, all right? Why is it sweeter? What you do is you put it in there, start boiling, and it boils down. And then before it burns, you add more sap to it, all right? And then it boils down again. And then you add more sap to it. Then it boils down again. Towards the end of the day, when you're running out of sap, you never try to finish the maple syrup over a fire. You can't control it well enough. You're either going to burn yourself, you're going to drop it, or it's going to burn. So what we do is, when it gets close to being done, but not quite maple syrup, you pull it off safely, and you dump it into a stock pot, you bring it in the house, and you finish it. And you use a good candy thermometer, all right? And this is one that I got at Tyson's, all right? I don't know, it was like 15 bucks. It's okay. Now, how do we know maple syrup is maple syrup? How do we know when it's maple syrup? 7 degrees above the boiling point of water, all right? 7.5 if you really want to be careful. What changes the boiling point of water? There's 2 things on this earth that will change the boiling point of water. Altitude's the first one, and by God, I hope we don't change altitude, okay? What's the other one? Happens several times a day, and it almost invariably happens right as dark is falling. Pressure change, all right? So we always set this. We set these multiple times a day, and we always set them as it's turning dark, all right? So this one does not have a sliding scale on it. A lot of the really good maple thermometers, you'll be able to put this into a pan of boiling water, bring that water up to a boil, and adjust the scale. And then it'll tell you 7.5 degrees, there's maple. So you do have to do a little math. Always put this in water, bring it to a boil. Make sure you mark it, because it's not always 212. It'll range from 210 to 213, 214, depending on highs and low pressure systems as they come through. You go off of the boiling point of water at your location at that time of day, 7.5 degrees, you know you're at syrup. So get yourself a good candy thermometer. You probably also want to get yourself one of these. This is a refractometer. This is a sap refractometer. So they make sap and they make syrup refractometers. I always trust this, all right? So you can get these. They're going to set you back $30, $40, I think, maybe a little more. And you go to the store and get yourself DI water, and that's how you calibrate it. And I'll pass it around. I don't have any sap on it right now. But this will give you an idea of what your sap is testing for sugar concentration, all right? And then when you have the syrup one, you can look through there, put a drop of syrup on it, and you'll see what the grades of syrup are and in terms of what percentage sugar it is. We always worry, all right? We want it at least 66.5% sugar, all right? Below that, it's going to ferment, and we're putting a bad product out there. Above 66.5%, what will happen is it'll crystallize in the bottom of that jar, Most people start with a propane burner, a turkey fryer, all right? The first mistake is they don't use a new turkey fryer, all right? They use the old turkey fryer. Guess what it tastes like? It tastes like turkey oil, all right? So get yourself a new one. You're going to use that for 1 year because then you're going to get your propane bill, all right? You're going to burn a lot of propane, and then you're going to say, I can cut firewood awfully cheap, okay? So, and you'll go to a flat pan. You really will, because turkey burners, they sit a pan on top or a pot on top of it, and you're getting, back to that cauldron day, you're getting depth, not shallow width, all right? So, we always check the density, and we do that as we get closer and closer to syrup. And the best way to do it is with a hydrometer, all right? We don't drop this or it'll break, all right? So this one is meant for maple syrup. They make these aren't that expensive, all right? This, I test this, or I trust this more than I will the syrup refractometer, all right? Because these are calibrated and checked and tested at cold and at hot. And when I pass it around, you're going to see 2 red lines. We don't ever use the cold syrup line, all right? There's more variation in that. We always test it hot, all right? So I'm going to pass that around. That's the bottom ring that we test. So what we'll do is we'll fill this up, all right? We'll fill it up with syrup. We'll carefully set that down into it, and then that floats. What I'm going to show you next, it floats, all right? So this is tested hot, all right? Because that red line is floating high, I know I'm too dense, all right? So I'll dump in a little bit of water to bring it back down. Because if I put this syrup that's testing too dense into a bottle, it's going to crystallize on the bottom of it, all right? So we don't want to call it watering down because I'm mic'd up to that camera, but you want to make sure you're giving them the density that they think. Again, under USDA grade, it's 66.5% sugar. Okay, so easiest way is to get a hydrometer. You can also, those are, you're looking at less than $50 for that. You can go with one of these, all right? Because I judge a lot of syrup competitions, I use an automated Atago, all right? You're looking at $500, but you put a drop of syrup on that, you hit the go button, and in a few seconds, it's telling me exactly what that is, all right? And it's repeatable. We use synthetic cone filters, all right? It's really cheap to get. They work really well. They're called sock filters, and they're specifically designed for maple syrup. We've learned that if we put a disposable pre-filter, a paper filter inside of it, it's going to save your sock filter, and those sock filters will last forever, all right? Even if you never get to the commercial scale, it's a lot of fun. By the end of 3 to 4 weeks, you're tired because you've slogged through mud. And, when we gathered buckets, by the end of the season, you could scratch your ankles and not bend over. I mean, you're gathering 5-gallon buckets every day. And so you're going to get wet, you're going to get muddy, you're going to get cold, but you keep going back out there and doing it. It's addictive. And it's a good form of sugar. I mean, of all the different types of sugar, it's at least a natural type of sugar. The Amish in Indiana have figured out the technology to make flues and to weld stainless. They're going to make the big guys readjust their price because they're making as good or better equipment at a fraction of the cost. And so if you're interested in getting one of these or a flat pan, talk to me and I can get you some equipment dealers that are manufacturing out there. And even with the shipping freight, you're going to be so far ahead. So, or if you know somebody that knows how to TIG weld stainless, become their best friend. With that, now we're going to stop.